Columbia, a growing city in a beautiful area of central Missouri. However, as with every area in the world, unfortunately, there are pros and cons. In this video, I'm going to go through every detail, whether big or small, to determine whether Columbia, Missouri is the right place for you. But once again, I'm Noah Cochran, a real estate agent here in central Missouri area, particularly Columbia. I've been born and raised in Columbia, known it my whole life. And my goal with these videos is just to provide as much value and information as I can to folks who may be wanting to relocate here or make some type of move here, even sell their home here and find their value, kind of see what the market's doing, just to show off all the different aspects and market trends and everything go on in Columbia, Missouri and central Missouri in general. And as always, if you are one of those people, please feel free to reach out to me, give my number, email, text me, call me, fax me, show up out of nowhere. I would love to be of assistance in any capacity that I can. Now, without further ado, let's find out what Columbia, Missouri has to offer. Alrighty, so as you can see here, I'm going to go over all these different aspects of Columbia while trying to keep this video from being 2 years long. Then I'm going to end with some general pros and cons of this area that are essential to know if you're thinking about relocating here or making some type of move here in Columbia. So as I mentioned, Columbia is certainly a growing city and has a population of about 130,000 as of right now. And as you can see on the map here, this is the general location area of Columbia in Missouri here. There are also several other growing smaller towns around Columbia, such as Hawesville, which is actually where I currently live, right outside of the border of Columbia. But there's a lot of other options if you're wanting to be right outside of a nice growing city with access to its amenities, but also have a little more space. All right, so having said that, let's jump right in with the location and climate of this area in Columbia, Missouri. So to start out with the location, there are actually many benefits. And some of these categories are gonna have more benefits, some of them are gonna have some negatives. So as far as location, in my opinion, and of course, I'm a Missourian, I'm a Columbian, perhaps I'm biased, but Columbia is actually a very strong location, and here's why. First of all, you get to be within 2 hours of the St. Louis airport, maybe 2.5 hours of the St. Louis area and airport without living in St. Louis. Now, between Columbia and St. Louis, there are obviously other towns, but Columbia is the largest town with the most amenities with that proximity to St. Louis. Plus, Columbia also has its own airport. It's not obviously near as big as St. Louis's, but it does have its own airport. Additionally, we are only about a half hour from the capital, Jeff City, and only about an hour and a half from the Lake of the Ozarks, which is considered kind of a luxury environment here in Missouri. Better yet, we are only about 3 hours, which is a small trip, but we are about 3 hours from Branson and Silver Dollar City, which is the main attraction of Missouri and pulls a lot of people from different states. So as far as roads go, we have Highway 63, which is kind of the main road in Columbia, connecting it to many other places in the state of Missouri. And then we have I-70, which connects it to many other states, both west and east, running again straight through the middle of Columbia with many different access points there. So if I was grading Columbia based on location alone with relation to interstates and other big cities and things you need to access, but also it being a good sized town itself, I would give this a very high point grade, just based on the fact that we got St. Louis, the lake, with the benefit of you don't actually have to live there in those high population, high density areas, high traffic areas. You can actually live in a smaller town, but that is also close in location and has many of the amenities and things that you might want in a good, healthy, growing town. And just to hit on weather real quick, it kind of goes like this, pretty much. So take this as a con or a pro. It's very fickle. It goes back and forth, especially in the spring. The spring is kind of crazy, I'll be honest with you, and that's what it's doing right now. Cold, hot, just can't make it up his mind. We also do have some tornadoes. I've never experienced one too bad, but we definitely get high winds, and there are tornadoes, particularly around the Columbia area. But overall, and again, perhaps I'm a little biased, but I actually enjoy the Missouri weather as a whole. It's not too extreme in any way, not too cold, not too hot, typically not too humid like it might get down in Arkansas or lower, but it's probably most comparable to if you've ever been to Nashville or if you've ever been to Central Tennessee. That's probably what you can expect for the most part in central Missouri. As for the general landscape of the area, we do have a fair amount of cornfields and different types of things outside of Columbia, but compared to something like our sister state, Kansas, not even close. We also do not have any major wind farms or anything like that, like you might find in North Nebraska. But overall, honestly, Missouri countryside is very wild, I guess you could say, or maybe there's livestock on it, but a lot of wooded areas, a lot of open meadows and fields. So if you want to just talk about scenery for a second, I'd give it a fairly decent grade. It's not like a stunning mountain range typically or anything like that, but at the very least, it's not endless massive cornfields. For the most part, there are certainly parts of Missouri that can get like that, but around Columbia particularly, you're not going to find that. And I want to tie that right into some of the amenities in Missouri as far as nature goes. We actually have a significant amount of caves which attract a lot of different tourists. Some of these are close to Columbia, some of these are farther out from Columbia, but again, I want to comment on all the different things that are within some distance of Columbia, because again, Columbia is going to meet those requirements that a lot of folks want from a growing city that has different amenities and capacities that a smaller town might not have. but also without the, as of now, major traffic and density problems, though we will touch on that a little again later. But anyway, as I was saying, there are a lot of caves and parks in the Missouri, central Missouri area. And as for Columbia itself, there are actually some great parks and trails, pretty large ones, significant ones with some caves on them themselves. For instance, Rock Ridge State Park. And if you want to kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about, I would look up Rock Ridge State Park in Columbia, Missouri. We also have a fairly charming downtown area with several different theaters and events going on throughout the year. I've been to a few myself. Perhaps I'm a little biased, I'll be honest, about the downtown part, because I'm sure some people come in and be like, yeah, no, I like many other downtowns better. I'm a little biased because I grew up in this downtown. But as far as downtowns go, and I've been to several towns about this size, cities about this size, ours is fairly good. Just to put it in as objectively as possible, it's fairly good. There are definitely some specific places I would recommend, so I might make a video on that in the future. Obviously, there are some rougher parts of town. We're gonna again touch on that just a bit later, but overall, it's a fairly nice area. And just to touch again real quickly on kind of traffic and population density, I do believe still that one of the things I like most about Columbia is that you get access to all these different activities, amenities, opportunities, different things without it being, St. Louis craziness, right? But having said that, Columbia is getting a little worse. As far as traffic goes, there are some specific roads that are very, very, very filled with traffic pretty much constantly. It's quite annoying, I'm not gonna lie. In fact, I kind of want to make a video sometime ranking or kind of showing you what roads are the worst in this capacity. Not necessarily that you don't want to live there. The reason that they are so busy is because either they're close to a lot of different work sites, amenities, activities, or for instance, Grindstone. There's a road called Grindstone here in Columbia that has access again to a lot of different facilities, but also some really great neighborhoods, which is why it's so busy. But it's also a huge pain to drive on. Overall, the traffic's not too terrible yet. There are definitely some roads that are worse. Next to some of the major colleges and schools can get pretty crazy sometimes. We have our fair amount of accidents, but it's nothing too extreme as of yet. So as far as food, grocery, utility store type things, this is one pro for sure of Columbia thing I very much like about Columbia. And the fact that we don't have, again, too many people, but we have access to all these different stores. We got a bunch of different stores. Most of your most common utility stores, you won't see a few of maybe your more popular clothing stores, and we'll get into some of that in a second, but a lot of different utility stores, a lot of farm and food stores. We got a Buckeyes, which was Orscheln. We have a Tractor Supply, of course, Menards, Lowe's, Home Depot, all the good ones. We have an Aldi. For those of you who are Aldi fans, we do have an Aldi here in Central Columbia. And we have a bunch of different restaurants. We have high-end restaurants, and I might make a video again specifically on this, but we have a bunch of high-end restaurants if you want to class it out a little bit. But then we have a bunch of different fast food options, pizza options, all kinds of different options. And this really is one thing that is nice about, again, living in what I guess you could call a medium-sized city versus like the smaller cities around Columbia. They're nice. Some of them I might even like better in some ways, but they don't have access to a lot of these different stores, food options, amenities, whatever it may be. Now, as far as stores, one last thing, there are some things that Columbia, I think, is lacking some, and this could be a problem or a negative for some folks depending on what's, going on in their personal life, but I will jump into that in the cons section at the end of this video. All right, school. So I'm not gonna get into which schools I think are bad and which schools I think are good or any of that, but just in general, and this is, I always view as a pro, there are options. There are private schooling. There is several different options for public schooling. I personally am a big fan of the Career Center. Maybe you have one in your area back where you live. This is not traditional high school. It's gonna be alongside your normal high school, but we have one right next to one of the biggest high schools, Rockbridge, and it will teach many different trades. I took a couple classes there way back in the day to learn, kind of get into the construction field. They have hands-on light construction, engineering classes, mechanics classes, a bunch of digital media filming classes, TV classes, food classes, gardening classes, agriculture classes, a bunch of different opportunities there. And again, that's right next to Rockbridge High School, probably the biggest or tied for the biggest high school in Columbia. But again, I'm not going to grade these schools individually. That's something I would encourage, however, for you to kind of look at if you are wanting to move here. Are these schools going to be right for me? If I move here, which school district do I want to be a part of, etc., etc. All right, so now for cost of living. I'm not going to get into details here or kind of try to get into all the math of exactly what it's going to look like, because it will change drastically based on what subdivision you choose, based on what price range you might be looking to buy in, based on what job you're looking to get, etc., etc., etc. The list goes on, right? Instead, I'm really just going to compare it to the nation as a whole, so that way, depending on where you're moving from, you can see, is my cost of living going to go up generally or down generally? But to compare it to the nation as a whole, it is actually in the top 10 states for the lowest cost of living. It's around number 6, I believe, about tied with Arkansas right now. But again, in general, and especially compared to if you're moving from Texas, California, Florida, Georgia, some of the northern states, obviously New England, it will definitely be cheaper, and you will actually have a lot of benefits by taking, whatever position you are in life, whatever financial state you are in life, and taking that and then applying it to Missouri. You'll gain a lot of benefits there. So overall, cost of living, I'm not really going to grade it here, but it's very solid. And again, it depends very much on your state in life and what's going on. But just to compare it very quickly to one of our sister states, Illinois, no offense to Illinois or Chicago or any of that, but our taxes are far cheaper and are declining rapidly. Actually, there's a good chance that state income tax in Missouri will go away completely and maybe somewhat be transferred into sales tax. We have lower gas prices, lower grocery prices. But again, in general, cost of living, lowest 10 states in the US. So if you're moving, especially from specific areas, it will go down a lot for you, while also, again, maintaining, hopefully, a lot of the benefits and things you're searching for. Alrighty, so those were some of the main things I wanted to briefly, or somewhat briefly at least, go over before I get to some of the main pros and cons that should really help you determine whether this is the right area for you, or maybe you should search elsewhere. Alrighty, let's start off with the cons. We're gonna begin with the con that I kind of touched on because it's kind of a con and kind of a pro. As I mentioned, there are many stores, many options in Colombia. However, if you're moving from a very large area that has a lot of store options, particularly clothing store options, you will not find that in Colombia. We have a Target, we have a Columbia Mall, you'll have some options there, but as far as branded clothing, stores, different things like that, you'll see that in a lot of other cities and not Colombia. So Colombia really doesn't have that. You'd have to go to St. Louis for that, or maybe farther south into some bigger cities in Arkansas or southern Missouri. You really will not find that in Columbia, Missouri. Now, a lot of folks are really just ordering that stuff online, shopping online now, but if you're the type of person that wants to have those stores more in person, you probably won't find that here much in Colombia. As far as jewelry stores or any of those kind of luxury stores go, we do have several downtown actually, which are quite good. But again, you won't find a ton of the bigger brands or the bigger stores or chains or things in Colombia. Additionally, I did mention that there were many restaurant options. And while that is true, and we do have a lot of food options, you'll also be missing, and I won't get into what exact chains and things we're missing in this video, but you will be missing some high-end luxury restaurants, especially if you want like very nice high quality food. Colombia doesn't really have that. It has some, but again, depending on where you're moving from, you may not view it as such. Now, as for population related items, there are two things I want to quickly touch on. One, this doesn't really affect me, but I know this can affect some, again, depending on your place in life, but we do not have very many public transportation options. I don't see this increasing anytime soon. Again, in the future, Colombia will continue to grow and we will see more of those options. They're already expanding different highways and roads, but as of now, public transportation, not many options for you. The other thing, kind of people population I want to quickly touch on, unfortunately, is that Colombia does have somewhat of a homeless problem in some areas. Most of Colombia is not too bad. The areas that I'm in, not too bad. But on some major roads and some major areas, we do have very much a growing homeless problem where there's more homeless folks hanging out, more trash around in different areas. I'll probably get into a video briefly going over some areas you might want to watch out for, but there are also some neighborhoods. As far as crime goes, crime is not too bad, but there is one area specifically, and this is very easy to find just to look up online, but there's one area specifically that is not great in kind of the central Colombia area, more due to crime than homelessness, but we have some homelessness as well in some of the major streets, which don't typically cause major problems for folks, but it definitely can clutter up and make walking on the streets not as fun, again, in these specific areas. So I would definitely take this as a con, and it really does need to be fixed. I hope our local mayor and government tries to remedy this, but also remember that this is specific areas. There are a plethora of subdivisions areas that I basically never see a homeless person. If it's ever someone walking the street, it's some person walking their dog. So again, take that as a con, but don't take it as Colombia as a whole. Don't picture us as some like trash-filled, people walking everywhere kind of city. It's just a few specific areas in Colombia you want to watch out for. And yes, downtown has gotten worse. So walking through downtown, there are more folks hanging about, unfortunately. And lastly, I want to talk about Boone County as a whole. If you're coming from a very regulated city or area, this may be an upgrade for you. You may be getting less regulations. But for us folks in Missouri, Boone County has a lot of regulations, Now, this particularly affects people in the remodeling field, the building field, things like that. If you're coming from major cities or bigger areas than Columbia, it may not be worse. It may actually be better. You guys might actually be getting an upgrade by moving to Columbia. But again, for us folks, it kind of stinks sometimes how many regulations Boone County has, especially like me when I'm dealing with builders or maybe remodeling, things like that. It gets a little annoying when we have 57,000 regulations about, what type of railing I need for my home. Last but not least, let's talk about the pros. Now, I'm going to start off with one of the biggest pros. If you have kids particularly, this is probably going to be considered one of the biggest pros. Now, you might have noticed earlier that I did not talk about colleges and universities, and the reason for that is I saved it for this part right here. Now, we have several different universities. One I am not a fan of, but even Columbia University, we have a smaller community colleges, but the one everyone talks about and is kind of very big and important here in Columbia and brings a lot of people here, whether it be kids from Kansas City, St. Louis want to go to college here, and that is the University of Missouri, or Mizzou. Mizzou is very, very popular football team. Again, it brings a lot of people here, very high quality university for a lot of folks who really enjoy it, send all their kids there. So if you have kids that are going to be attending college, this is definitely a big pro that I would consider over any other part of Missouri. If you're considering Missouri as a whole, Columbia or in any kind of town around Columbia has a big pro of not only having a decent town, a decent city with a lot of different opportunities, but particularly living right next to Mizzou and having all those opportunities for your kids. So that was the biggest pro I want to emphasize. For a lot of folks, if you don't have kids going to college, then this may not be a pro for you, but for a lot of families, it is. The other pros I want to go over very quickly, I already touched on, but it really has to do with variety, location, and just the style of city it is. We have many different areas and subdivisions in Columbia and kind of surrounding Columbia, which gives a lot of different options about what style of home and area you want to live. There are homes that are big and more of a retirement home or an upsizing home. If you want to buy a nice expensive home with more land, you have that option. You have very, very well maintained subdivisions that are like top-notch quality, but also can be tight in some areas. We have cheaper homes. We have lots of new construction. That's another pro I wanted to talk about. We have a lot of great new builders in Columbia, which is one reason it's a growing city, but we have a bunch of great builders. And actually a big thing I try to do on this channel is do video tours for a lot of these builders and connect with these builders, show off their new builds, whether it be in the low end or the high end. We have builders that build in the $250,000 price range. We have builders that build in the $1 million price range and everything in between. So lots of great options with new construction on more land out in slightly country area surrounding Columbia, right on the fringes of Columbia, new construction right in town close to everything you might want to go to. So again, a second big pro for me is really just the opportunities and options in Columbia as far as styles of homes, land, all kinds of things that you might want without having to move to one of those big cities that has that population density, higher crime, different things that you would deal with in St. Louis or other bigger cities. So for me, those are really two of the biggest pros, which is Mizzou and the variety that you will get in Columbia without having to be in a populated huge city. So I could go over more things I like about Missouri, but I kind of try to touch on those up front, like the different caves and trails that you'll get access to, the kind of country vibe that surrounds Columbia, location bonuses of being close to St. Louis and Branson and the lake and all kinds of things like that. But this video is already way too long, so I'm gonna have to cut it off here. I hope that was helpful to y'all in showing you what Columbia, Missouri is like. What pros and cons does it have? Should you move here? Should you pick a different part of Missouri? Is this right for you? Again, I just want to help folks and provide as much value and information about this area and what's going on so I can help you decide, should I move here? Or if you already move here, should I move to a different part of this location? Should I sell my home here? How to sell my home here? Etc., etc. I just want to provide as much content as I can to further these causes and be as much of a benefit as I can. Once again, though, I'm Noah Cochran, an agent here. Please feel free to reach out to me if you want to look in the area. I don't care what state you're from, where you're from. I would love to assist you in taking a further look at the area. I can provide you personal tours to tour a home if you can't see a home in person from out of state. I can help evaluate your home for free. In fact, there's a form below that you can fill out, and I'll send you a free home valuation based on all the parameters you give me to kind of give you a general sense of what your home might sell for here in Columbia. Anyways, though, just feel free to reach out to me at any point in time. I would love to hear from you. Give me a call, shoot me a text, show up out of nowhere. I would love to be of assistance. But folks, my voice is dry. I'm tired of talking. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this brought you value and the information that you might have been looking for. And until next time, y'all have an awesome one.